Hi, everybody. It's Grace.
Hi, it's Larea.
And we are the Indigos. And Ray, I don't know if everyone has seen, but Ray did an amazing thing on the weekend called Lunch on Me Challenge. Ray, you want to tell them quickly what it was about?
Yeah, so basically, I feed the homeless. I've been doing it for a really long time, and we got our organization together, and it had volunteers come out. We fed 200 people, and we had about 50 volunteers. So it was really amazing for Easter. We fed the homeless, and we're going to do it again next month and feed 500 people. So it was a really incredible turnout.
So if you're in LA, you should try and see if you can support it. Even if you're from around the world, there's an initiative going around, a campaign that Lorraine is running. So anyway, I just wanted to do a shout out to you, Lorraine. That was unrehearsed. I just wanted to tell everybody what happened on the weekend for you. It was really cool, and I'm very proud of her for doing it. So if you can support it, and it's just a great initiative. So you can find out more on her Instagram pages and stuff. So today we're going to talk about past love relationships and their serving for you, what that means, having past relationships and what you've been through with that person. So Ray, you want to take it away?
Yeah, basically we want to first pay tribute to the fact that when you go through relationships, sometimes a lot of people say, I wasted my time, I shouldn't have dated this person, or whatever comes to mind when it comes to something ending, not necessarily being forever. And one thing that we've learned, and collectively Grace and I talk about, is the fact that we embrace experiences we've had, because through every relationship, whether it turned out good, bad, it ended, whatever the reason, we've found things that we learned about ourselves going into it we might not have known. And if we treat new situations like an experience where we don't put such an emphasis on what it's to turn into, but embrace the fact that we're in something new and that there's something to learn and not have expectations, then you can really get the lesson in which you're to learn. A lot of times people come into our lives, obviously, when you're dating, when you plan to spend forever with someone, it's one person, and yet we date multiple people throughout our life. So a lot of those romantic relationships come to you to teach you lessons, because love always inspires. And we were talking about it because we just talk about anything from ex relationships to, casual dating, but the things we've learned about people, about ourselves. And we wanted people to kind of shift their thinking when it comes to being in a negative space, to think like, oh, this didn't work out, oh, this was a negative experience, but actually take a second to think about what you learned about yourself, good and bad, and what you learned about the person and what they inspired in you. Even if that person was so terrible and you realize what you don't want anymore, you can now recognize it because you've been in a direct experience. And
Yeah.
that's basically, go ahead, Grace. That's
No,
basically
I was going to say, usually those kind of most heartfelt connections or situations or heartache that you experience are usually the ones that teach you the most profound lessons about yourself, what it is that you needed to learn. So it's really hard sometimes, because I think what happens a lot of the time is that your perception of what should be in a relationship determines what you feel about the outcome of how things ended. So if somebody cheats on you, or if someone's dishonest to you, or any of that kind of negative kind of connotation of things that we often think about as a failed relationship, can quite often steer you and help you, guide you to potentially mold what it is that you need in a relationship that's to come to you. So I know from my experience, because Ray and I, we were just talking about relationships just before we got on here, and what we've been through in the past and what they've taught us. And it's quite often I find that it's really important that you sit back and reflect on all of those past relationships. So that's a really good way to heal and to be open to be able to reflect on things and see the outcomes of those situations, and what you actually, if you try to remove your ego away from that experience and what that did to you immediately, like hurt you and, you know, made you feel certain ways, if you remove yourself away from that and detach from that, what did it teach you profoundly deeper beyond the ego? And that's what we were kind of like touching on when we were talking about, you know, relationships and what they have served for you in the past.
So Grace, what was the last thing you learned within your last situation? Maybe we should just talk about just something that we learned, you know? We could both talk about things that we last learned that were positive, even through the situation.
Well, yeah, just recently, and it wasn't, it is actually a bit of a love relationship, but it, you know, wasn't like sexual. It was like just a love relationship with this person. For example, something really quite profoundly scary happened in a situation with both of us. And what I did learn from all of this was that I've had an issue subconsciously. So when I say subconsciously, like we're in our immediate space is our conscious space. Around us is our conscious space. But subconsciously, in a deeper realm, what I have been projecting out there is that I don't trust men. I have an issue with men. So it's quite a profound thing. But what I learned was that whole experience of going into this really deep space of actually pulling myself away from what scary experience I experienced, and that and what it did to the immediate impact for me consciously. If I removed myself from that experience, what else did it teach me? And it actually taught me that I have an issue with trusting men, and that stems from past things that have happened continuously throughout my life. But what I realize is that I need to now start to trust again. I need to forgive and I need to trust, and that doesn't dictate my relationships anymore, going into every relationship knowing that I can't trust that person. So I have to start to work on the trust within myself to be able to trust other people. So that's a pretty big lesson I learned just recently. And yeah, what about you, Ray?
Well, one thing I learned, a little backstory, I've only been in love twice, and I feel like my last relationship, the biggest lesson I had learned was, well, for one, I feel like once you've been in your first like relationship where you're in love and it doesn't necessarily work out, you feel like that's the end and you can't love anyone to that capacity again. And my last relationship opened me up to knowing that, for one, I could love again on the deepest level. And it also made me recognize that from my first initial hurt and disappointment, that I was healed from some of those things. And that healing was the fact that even when the second time it came around, I'd fallen in love and it didn't necessarily work out. It was a different form of hurt and pain, but I learned that I was 100% okay to heal. So even within that situation, I had learned like, oh, I can get back up. It's okay. And I learned to celebrate the situation. I feel like in the first relationship, the first experience, you naturally are victim because you're not looking at, oh, what are the lessons I learned? You're looking at as I'm in pain and that's all I know. And the second time,
that's the ego. That's the ego of what I was talking about before. Yeah.
I think that sometimes second time around makes you recognize a certain lesson. Sometimes you don't get it the first time around. You don't even know what that is, or you don't recognize exactly what you're experiencing. But then the second time, as the emotions come around between hurt, disappointment, pain, certain things surface. And for me, it was the fact that as much as I thought I was closed, I was in a state to be open again. And I also learned that love would inspire me to be as open as anything. And I feel like I also learned, because through other relationships I wasn't inspired, I recognized 100% genuine love, and it came from a spiritual connection. It wasn't someone I was attracted to specifically. Like, obviously I was attracted to the person I was in love with, but it wasn't that. It was specifically oh, there's a connection beyond us. And that's what's inspiring me to be open, no matter how much I've been hurt prior to the situation, no matter how much I've been through, I can actually acknowledge the fact that I can love and it is okay. And sometimes love will tug on you and push you to be open and take chances. And I learned that
Mm.
it wasn't a fluke, that it actually can occur in other times once you're 100% open. So the most beautiful part, yeah, it hurt and it was disappointing and it was a lot of things that relationships can be. But the
Mm.
bigger picture for me was whether I'm in this relationship that didn't work or I'm in another one, I'm 100% capable of loving as a whole, because a lot of times we feel like we're empty or we're not full after the person takes a certain part of our heart. And I learned
Yeah, and
that
that's the other thing is like, in order to be whole, in order to love wholly, you need to love yourself as well. So that's, for me, my whole thing with the trust thing comes back to like, I need to trust myself. I need to work on myself. I need to have the self-love so that I am a reflection of that. And when the time comes, when all these journeys that I've been through and different people that I've met, romantic relationships, love relationships, all of those things that I've endured with those people have been lessons for me. And the lessons, they keep coming if I'm not learning from them. So now
oh,
I've like,
and it's the same lessons. Oh my God, when it came the second time
same
around,
lesson.
you recognize it. Once it keeps coming back to you, you recognize it. And that's how I was. Second time around, I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna be open, I'm gonna try, blah, blah, blah. And you know, you always have an option to play victim or gather what it was you needed to learn. And that's
Mm.
a healthier place to be in, because it's a faster recovery and healing as well. Where that's how I got to a state where it was like, okay, all right, these things are happening. It's very real life. But I mean, there's beautiful things. And even getting to a point where you've been hurt and disappointed and let down, and yet you're like, yeah, but this isn't the end. And there
No.
is a person
Even though
to love.
sometimes it does feel like the end. Sometimes it does feel like, it's the end and everybody, like, you just want to curl up in a ball and just be nothing.
That's victim. That's the victim role.
Yeah, but
There's two
sometimes I mean, that's human. It's human, like sometimes you just want to cry and you don't want to fucking deal with anybody. It's just like,
well, you
you know,
go through the motion, but there's a difference between people staying victim and getting to a space where they're thinking. Those are very different.
exactly.
Even human. I mean, I didn't mope around and like be victim every second. It was like, all right, I accept this reality because these are the options that I was given, because this is the choices that were made. You know, when you're dealing with love, it's a two-way street. You're going to
Mm.
deal with your actions and you're going to deal with another person's that you don't have any control over. And
Yeah,
with that, like, why be victim? Just say, all right, okay, yeah, it's
yeah.
gonna hurt. It's
Well, I
not
mean, and
nice.
it takes a lot of work to not be a victim either, because it means not being a victim means taking your ego out of the equation,
Mhm.
stepping away from what immediately you feel. And it's hard because, like, in practice, you get better and better at living without ego. But, we live in an ego world where you're just self, and this is how it directly affects you, and this is how you directly feel about this, and da da da. So, it takes a lot of practice to be able to remove yourself and be able to reflect on things, and then see the lessons and learn from the lessons and evolve. But that's why we're talking about this stuff, because our situations, like Lorea's stuff is like fear of being open. Mine was like trusting. Mine has been completely about trust and everything. So and those lessons have come up for me all the time, like in the past. And I just had a real, what does Oprah call it? An aha moment.
Yeah, your aha moment. Yeah.
Yeah, I had an aha moment experiencing something really scary, but I needed to, because like my subconscious mind was like, wake up, Grace. Like, we keep learning the same shit over and over and over and over again. And that's what it was. It came out to me as that. So now I know that I need to work on that for myself, and Ray, like your lessons as well, and that's what we need to do. We need to just step away and realize that each each person who's come into our lives that we have loved, that we have shared a loving relationship, an intimate relationship with, has been there to teach us something about ourselves and how we can love better and more openly. Because, you know, well, I guess. Go, Ray. What do you want to say?
I'm just here to learn lessons, and we're here to grow and expand. And I mean, basically, the core lesson that we're really just trying to get across is the fact that be open to relationships, go into them not with expectations, but just saying, you know what, I'm going to experience this for the sake of learning and growing and exchanging a moment with someone. Be open to that. And I think that it's weird because I feel like Grace and I definitely within this year have even grown leaps and bounds just by being more open and aware and conscious by having these conversations and staying in such a centered place to remind ourselves constantly, like, oh, we're not going to go in this garden. We're going to go in this fearless, like the human beings we were created to be. You know, we're spiritual. We're
together.
strong.
We're supposed to be learning together. Yeah.
And disappointed. I mean, you're going to deal with that. No one's exempt from like hurt, pain. And so like, why fight it? Just kind of embrace, because sometimes like a good moment will happen and it will actually like make up for all the things that might have went wrong. You know, that's where the miracles come in.
Yeah. Yeah, that is very true.
Right? Yes.
Yeah. No, I mean, you know, we can talk about this stuff, relationships, because I mean, we're human beings. That's how we interact socially, romantically, everything. We need a spouse, a person, a community around us. So, you know, if you have anything you want to share about your love relationship stories, just hit us up and put a comment on our YouTube channel, share it around, and we'll probably talk about some other things around relationships, I'm sure, a number of different times. But yeah, today was more about like past relationships and learning from them, to be able to call in other relationships and being open.
Yes, it's all about openness, guys. Thank you. You're so awesome for always listening to our crazy conversations that we're sharing. They're very intimate. So again, we will see you soon. Thank you very much.
We'll see you next time. Adios.
Bye.